Hi there, today I'm going to share with you 7 tips to help you be a better leader. Now these are 7 traits that I've observed in highly effective leaders, and I believe that by applying these, you'll become better at leading your projects and your teams. So tip number 1 is to maintain a sustainable pace. This means maintaining a constant velocity throughout the lifetime of the project and not lurching from emergency to emergency. Your team should be working a consistent number of hours per week, and to do this you need to plan in some capacity to deal with the mistakes and the emergency situations that are going to happen. If you don't do this, you'll tend to find that your team will burn out over time, and you'll burn out yourself trying to manage and deal with all these emergencies and this kind of unpredictable progress, because that's what's going to happen. If you're moving from emergency to emergency, you're not delivering constantly throughout the project, then you'll find yourself as a leader constantly having to update your roadmap and constantly fighting to keep the project on track. And to do this, then probably you're going to have some difficult conversations with team members and ask them to work a little longer, or deal with your stakeholders and let them know that things aren't going to be perhaps delivered when they hoped. So it's really important that your team members maintain the energy to work consistently and at their best throughout the project. And sustainable pace is really the only way to do this. If you don't do this and people start to burn out, you'll possibly end up losing team members, which is the worst of all situations. But whatever happens, you will stifle innovation as people get tired and people are rushing around with loads of unplanned work in their heads. Then they'll have no time to think how to go better in the project. Tip number 2 is to stick to one miracle. Now hopefully you don't need a miracle, but the chances are there's probably something in your project which is worrying you right from the start. Make sure if there is a miracle that needs to happen in your project, you stick to just the one. There are difficulties in every project, but we've learned to deal with most of them by now, but miracles are much harder to accomplish. If you've got more than one item in your project that you're just not sure how you're going to solve, or that relies on so many other people, third parties and dependencies, that the chances of it all coming together are really slim, then you really need to think about are there any other ways that you could approach this in your project. Adding a miracle to your project exponentially increases the risk of non-delivery. And the more third parties and different stakeholders and dependencies that have to all come together to make this miracle happen, the riskier it is. And while we're talking about risk, it really is your job as a leader to manage that risk for your team and for your project. Maintain a list of all the risks that you can possibly think of, and think about the things that might go wrong and what you might do to mitigate those, so that you've got some semblance of a plan should they occur. Tip number 3 is to always be completely open, honest and transparent with your team. You expect it from them and they should be able to expect it from you. Openness and honesty and transparency are so key to the successful run of a project. If you keep secrets in your project, then people won't have the information they need to make good decisions, and surely you want everybody on your team to be able to make good decisions. But also you want to be able to improve the ways of working and improve the process. So if you give your team members honest, open and respectful feedback, then they will do the same to you. And this culture will be built where they can come to you with problems. And there's one thing that you definitely don't want as a leader, and that is for problems to be hidden away, for people to be sat on top of problems. Because your job is to solve problems, and your job is to lead the team through these challenges. And if you don't even know they exist, then there's absolutely nothing that you can do about it. So the next tip is to stop tinkering. Resist the urge to think you have to look busy and constantly change things. You have a good strategic vision and a plan that you've worked on with your colleague to really accomplish that strategy in the most effective way. So stick with the plan, measure it and observe it. And if you do spot some things that perhaps could be a little bit different, work a little bit more effectively, then put some data points in place and measure that for a little while. But make it deliberate. Don't keep going and poking around your project and changing the way that people need to work or the way the project is run just because you think a leader has to be constantly changing. Tip number 5 is just one of those that's harder to do than it is to say, and that is to make decisions quickly and often. Now, you should defer decisions when it's safe to do so, and by this I mean try to make decisions later on while it's not holding up your team, because the later you make your decision, the more information you're likely to have and the better that decision can be. However, when your team really needs decisions, it's really, really important that you make them quickly. You'll really, really block them, and they'll start to tread water and not achieve what you're trying to accomplish. And any decision at this point is better than no decision at all. If you make a decision, at least they've got a way of working, and your decision's probably going to be 80-90% right, even if it's not 100%. And that way, later on, they can just do some minor course correction rather than being stalled and moving nearer and nearer to that deadline until you've made that decision, and all of a sudden, they've got a sprint on their hands. And tip number 6 can be difficult too, and that is to delegate, but don't abdicate. You can't do it all. And if you try and do it all, you're going to burn out. And the last thing that your team needs is an ineffective leader. You'll end up doing a poor job of at least some things, and probably some things won't get done at all. So it's really important that you trust your team to get on with tasks, but that doesn't mean that those tasks are no longer your responsibility. The responsibility still remains with you, and you must be there to support and to check up if it's the first few times they've done something, for example. So you must delegate, but remember that the responsibility and the accountability for that task still remains with you as the leader. So if, like this lot, you find this content interesting and you'd like to learn to become a good leader, then please do consider subscribing to this channel, and remember to ring the notification bell so you know when I next upload. And if you found this content valuable, please give it a thumbs up, it really helps. Thank you. And tip number 7 is to build a culture of learning. Now, excellence is a process of incremental improvement. And we make mistakes and we have to learn from our mistakes. Something I need to learn is to press record next time I'm out taking this video, which is why I'm sat here now having got back to edit it and found out that I had some missing footage. But our team, especially in change projects, will be making mistakes all the time as we learn new things and try to progress. But it's really important that we have this safe space for the team to fail. I've talked about this in a previous video, but if we don't set up a safe environment for failure, and we punish mistakes, then the only thing that our team members can do is to stop looking for improvements, to carry on working the way they are, and to stop innovating. We need to make sure we're measuring success, and really importantly, we need to make sure that the task is small enough that any failure that does happen is not catastrophic. And we're not just looking to improve the outcomes of the project, we're also looking to improve our ways of working. So make sure you carry out regular retrospectives with your team and really look at the way that you do things and see if any improvements can be made. So that's it for today. 7 tips for being more effective as a leader. I hope you found it useful, and if you have any tips of your own, please share them with everyone in the comments below. See you soon. Thanks for watching.